Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Amy Kinsel. I'm Dean of Social Sciences and Library here at Shoreline Community College. And it's my pleasure to introduce Mayumi Steinmetz, who will talk with us today about research she carried out this fall in the Republic of China, Taiwan. Mayumi spent 4 months doing research in Taiwan about the ethnic identity and culture of indigenous peoples. And her research included extensive interviews with some of the leaders of Taiwan's 16 indigenous groups, as well as more interviews and research at some of Taiwan's premier universities. She found the indigenous tribes to be a resilient and unified group with a strong ethnic identity. And they are united by their history of struggle and hardship, but also by the adoption of Christianity practiced by the majority of members of these tribes. This conversion helped them cope with acculturation process under both Japanese and Chinese authority. And Mayumi will speak about these her research in a couple of minutes. Professor Steinmetz started teaching here in 1993. She teaches Japanese language as well as East Asian history, including Japanese civilization. And one of her, she has a master's degree in Asian studies at the University of Oregon and started her teaching career in order to get students to open their eyes and see things from different perspectives. She's an advisor to the Shoreline Japanese Culture Club, and being a club advisor, she says, is fun because she can enjoy time with students and be a part of student activities. I'd also like to acknowledge that Director General of the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Seattle, Vincent Yao, has joined us today. Please join me in welcoming him. And we're very honored that you're able to be here. Before we start, I want to mention a couple of housekeeping items. There are emergency exits out to your left and in the back where you came in. We're recording this event for future viewing, and during the question and answer period, we'll ask you to use the microphone so that your questions will be recorded. Before you leave, please take a moment to fill out the survey, feedback survey on your chair. So without any further ado, please welcome Professor Mayumi Steinmetz.
So this is the poster that I asked to produce, and the picture here, this is the church I spent, I would say, like 2 months, September and October. This church is located in Hualien County, Gongfu, east coast of Taiwan. And I'm going to show you a map later so you would see where it is. But so these men are the elders of the church. And this picture was taken by a pastor, Hannah, my friend, during the Harvest Festival. Now they call it as a Thanksgiving festival in August last year. And so they're wearing a traditional Amis clothing, and they're called Amis tribe people. In Chinese, I guess they pronounce it as Amezhu. And so if I say that, some people may be familiar. Oh, yeah, you are nodding. Yeah, because when I talk with the speakers of Mandarin, and I say, oh, I was in Taiwan, and I researched about Amis people, and they're like, Amis people, who are they? And so I say, Amezhu, and then it's, oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, so, okay. And do you know what they're blowing? What kind of musical instrument they're blowing? They look like horns, right? Shofar. Ram's horn. Who would usually use those? What nationality? Jewish. Yes, this is a Jewish tradition. So now, looking at this indigenous church, Christian church, they combine this traditional, the clothing, and their festivals are more Bible-based, Christian Bible-based, but also they really identify themselves very similar to Jewish people when they are like Exodus. You know, they are delivered from a slavery of, Egypt. I'm talking about Old Testament. And so thousands of years ago, I'm talking about the story of thousands of years ago, and they relate. They totally relate. And so now, looking at this, participating in this church and talking with people, it was an interesting feeling of the combination of traditional Amis culture in it, and also new element of Jewish culture. And I got confused. Who are these people? And so I have 50 slides, and that Larry said, don't mention it because then people will leave. But I'm telling you, I have 50 slides, but the first 20 slides are the background information, which are not my main point. And so I'm going to zap through these first 20. And so, and I want to talk about these people the most. So, okay. So first of all, I want to thank the Taipei Economic Cultural Office in Seattle. Yeah, and they're the ones who selected me and forwarded my name to compete with other scholars. And so the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Republic of China, I was selected, and so I got the fellowship, and so that's how I could go to Taiwan. And so I spent 2 months in Taipei. A National Taiwan University hosted me for 2 months. And then I went to Hualien County, and National Donghua University hosted me 2 months. The reason why I selected Hualien is because the Donghua University has the Indigenous Studies. And Donghua is the only university which has Indigenous Studies. And the Hualien is really important area for the Indigenous Studies. When you go to Hualien, only thing you think about is the beautiful scenery. It is beautiful, but there's so much culture to it. So, okay, right now the population of Taiwan is about over 23 million, and 70% of the population are the Hokudo ethnic groups, and usually they're called Taiwanese. So when people say, oh, I'm Taiwanese, usually the Hokudo, they are Minnan people. And the Hakka minority people are about 14%, and the mainlanders who went to Taiwan with Chiang Kai-shek in 1949 when the Republic of China moved from Beijing to Taipei, the government. And then 2% are Austronesian-speaking indigenous people. So that's the target. So indigenous people are the ones that I studied about. So I apologize for those of you who are more, who are expecting me to talk about the Taiwanese culture, the mainstream culture. I'm not going to talk about it. So I apologize to begin with. Really, only 2%. Okay, so Austronesian speaking people are not only in Taiwan. So Taiwan is right here. And so all over the world, the indigenous people, the Austronesian speaking people are spread around the oceanic area. Okay, so the Taiwan indigenous people lost their sovereignty little by little. So this chart, if I talk about this chart in details, that's the end of my presentation. So I'm going to just point out here. So in 1895,
Indigenous people, you talk about 2%, it is only from this particular area.
yes, yes.
Otherwise, Taiwan's indigenous people is 10%.
So I'm going to talk about the government recognized the Taiwan indigenous people.
Yes.
Yes.
10%.
Yeah, two.
Yeah. It's 10%. And when you said about 70% is the overall, after overall is only 60%.
Yeah. We can talk about this later, but please let me speak. Okay. And so this 1930, the Ushu Rebellion is really the key point for the indigenous people turning into the Christians. And so how many people have watched Sedec Valley, the movie you have watched? And so that was the battle between the Sedec, the tribal people, and also Japanese colonial rulers. And so the Sedec people are totally crushed. And so that 1930 marks the 100% Japanese colonization. So this map was created in 1901 based on the Japanese the map. And so this red line divides the indigenous governed area. So in 1901, still the Japanese were not really suppressing the indigenous people 100%, because this area, this map, it doesn't show, but this area is really the mountainous area. It's really hard to go. And so the colonial rule, what I want to talk about is the village head. Normally, the indigenous villages, the village head was the important person who governed everything, but the Japanese police replaced the head of the village, and also the restricted private land ownership. And then the indigenous people who lived in the mountains were enclosed by the electrified wire fences. And so therefore, the Japanese government prohibited the people who lived in the plain area and the people who lived in the mountain area. They could not communicate. And so in order to understand why the indigenous people became Christians, I decided to use the Anthony Wallace's, he's the anthropologist, and his theory of revitalization movement. And so the indigenous people had a conscious effort to make their the culture better, more satisfying for their daily life. And therefore, they took almost like an extreme emergency measures. In order to have a revitalization movement, there are 5 stages. But I want to especially talk about this third point and the fourth point. And the third period is called the cultural distortion, when the group of people are suffering from the stress for longest time. They begin to develop this cultural distortion phenomena. So at the end, so the behaviors might be, alcoholism or depression, that kind of things, and then the life loses the meaning to why should I live? Why should I exist? And so that kind of cultural distortion, if you just let it go like that, so this process totally leads the society to the death. So the death of the society, meaning like this group of people totally disappears, most likely assimilated into a different culture. And therefore, in order not to have a death of a society, they have to have this revitalization process. So the first one, they would have a spiritual leader appearing to, and then this spiritual leader is going to be a prophet. And then this prophet would have disciples and followers. For the indigenous people's case, the prophet is the pastor of the church, and then the organization is the Christian churches. And so at the end, they are totally accepting this new religion, which is Christianity in their case. And then now, the Christianity is a normal thing. And so this one talks about the Japanese colonial rule, how their suffering helped actually to push them to change to a Christian believers. And then even after the World War II, the Christian missionaries helped them to organize like education, hospitals, and job training, and also especially in 1960s. By that time, the Taiwan was changing already with the Mandarin Chinese as the mainstream language. And therefore, anything but Mandarin Chinese would be prohibited. And therefore, when you're living in a culture that denies your origin, your self-esteem is going to go down. And now some scholars will call it as a stigmatized identity. So the entire group of people will have that kind of symptom. But in 1980s, the indigenous people begin to voice in a political realm. And that's when they begin to really began to feel more proud of themselves. And therefore, they can go back to their original culture, traditional culture. Okay, so from now on, this is more like based on my experience. So this is the Amis territory. So there are 16 indigenous people, and so I stayed 2 months around here. And so Taipei area is here, and I went all over Taiwan, actually, and I met lots of different people. But now, the indigenous people united through the Christian beliefs, and so I was invited to attend this Taiwan Aboriginal Pastoral Development Association meeting on September 1st. And so he is my friend now. He's Pastor Enoch, and he's Amis. And then this pastor is from Taichung area, and she's Bunun, so here, Bunun. And so this, I'm sorry, she's Taiwan person, but she lived in Taichung. And so this group had about 5 different ethnic groups represented, the Bunun and the Amis and Taiwan and also Tayal. Yeah, I guess 4. Yeah. And so actually a lot of Amis people now are in the political area, active in politics. And he's a congressman from the Amis area. And so he also goes to this church and he's prayed over, and the youth pastors are prayed over. And so this is the chart, shows you about average of 70% of the indigenous people are identifying as Christians. And so up to here, up to Tsuo, they are recognized as indigenous people during the Japanese colonial time. And then, I'm sorry, up to Yami. And then from Tao to Huala, I can't pronounce this name, but so these indigenous people are more recognized later on. And so there are a lot of indigenous people still are not recognized. It's because they are assimilated early on. They're assimilated into Han Chinese culture, and then it's really hard to prove. And if you can't prove, they cannot claim they're indigenous people. And so there are a lot more, actually, yes, like he said, mentioned, there are more indigenous people, but they are not recognized by the government. Oops. So I also attended another gathering of the indigenous peoples, Christians, the first Taiwan First Nations Rise Together Pentecostal activity. And again, these are different denominations even. These are the Assembly of God church people. And so this outfit is the Amis. And this is the Tayal. And this looks like Bunun. So again, they're playing shofar, the ram's horn. And so they often use this ram's horn in their worship service. And so that's really something I thought, wow, this is different. Because I have never really seen that ram's horn in a Christian church in the United States. Yeah. Oh. And then at one point, these are the Han Chinese pastors, and they apologized the wrongdoing they did historically speaking. And then these are the indigenous pastors praying over them. And also indigenous pastors also apologized to them. And so they apologized to each other for the wrongdoing towards each other, because they are enemies in the past, long ago. Each tribal people were contained in the village, and so anybody outside of the village are enemies, potential enemies. So, and so it was a very emotional moment. I was here, so I took this picture. So as you can see, there are so many people, and so I was actually here. But I took this picture when I sneaked out for the bathroom break or something. So I could, really see it from a different angle. Okay, so this is my traveling experience, and this is Yilan County, and this is the Tayal church. These are all Presbyterian churches, and this is the Yushan Theological College and Seminary, and Dr. Ton used to be a principal of this college, and he was one of my mentors for this research. And this is Puyuma, and from Taiwan. And so Puyuma is the only indigenous people, among 16, who does not have the Bible in their own language. Other indigenous people all have the Bible in their language. And so she decided to become a pastor about 5 years ago. So she went back to study at the Yushan Theological College and Seminary. And so she became a pastor for this church in order to revive the culture, the Puyuma culture, before everything becomes just, Han Chinese culture. And these are two Amis churches, and this is also Amis churches. These two are near the Taipei area, Taoyuan. Actually, it's near the airport. And this Amis church is from Taichung. And these pictures are actually from the amusement park or kind of. So the Indigenous amusement park in Nanto around here. And this is Taiwan celebration I was invited to in Pinto around here. And so she's a Taiwan tribe. And I was told that I should wear the Taiwan queen's dress. So I dressed up like that. Okay. So this is my first experience with meeting with Amis people. And so this is Kanjin village this is Taipei city, and then Taoyuan city. And it's about 1 hour by car to get here. And so she's showing me the bag here, something she made. Traditionally, Amis people always had this little bag like that, the shoulder bag, to put betel nuts. Do you know what betel nuts are? Yeah. Let's see. I think, okay. Okay, so here, it's kind of small, but these are betel nuts. And so betel nuts is something that very unique. Well, it's important part of the Amis culture. And so they chew the fruit. And then I guess it's kind of sour, and it has the same effect as when you smoke tobacco or something like that kind of effect. But they use those betel nuts even for proposal for the marriage. And so it was, so they always carried around the betel nuts. So they don't carry around betel nuts anymore, but it's just a traditional thing. Yeah. Oops. And so this is actually the pastor of this village, and Kanjin village has 14 families. And he only went up to junior high school for his age, it's the common thing. For the indigenous people, just finish up to the junior high school. And so he can't really read and write Mandarin Chinese characters. And so he reads Bible with bohomoho. That's the sort of like alphabets in a way, and also Amis language. And so he showed me, he's certified lay pastor, and he built his own church. Yeah, this is his, and he said he dreamed about, he got this dream that the God told me he needs to build a church in his village. And so he went through the schooling and he got the certificate. And so I asked him, what are those pictures? And so these are the pictures of the orphans of the Thailand that this church supports. And so I was with the scholars, anthropologists, 3 of them with me, helping me to interpret. And we are all like, wow, this church doesn't look, wealthy or anything, and yet they support these kids, really? So they are really into overseas mission too. So we are so impressed. And so while he was talking all these stories, he was crying and we all became emotional. But anyway, so this is the Harvest Festival. I want to point out, so he is Tomu, the village leader, and so he leads this traditional dance. But traditionally speaking, all this event was opened by Shikawasai. Shikawasai is sort of like a religious leader who is like a shaman in a way. But now Shikawasai is replaced with a Christian leader. And so a Christian leader will have a prayer, and so everybody is bowing their heads. And so I asked him, so who are the Christians in your village? He said, everybody. So everybody comes to this church, and except one family, he said. And the one family, the husband is Taiwanese and the wife is Amis. And so they go to a different, the Buddhist, the temple instead of his church, he said. And so, so we were watching, this traditional dance, and so she is the second Tomu. He is the 4th one, and she's second, and I'm having a good time with her talking. It's because a lot of people speak Japanese. Yeah, so that's why. And so I had really a good conversation with her. Okay, the Presbyterian Church is the first missionaries went to Taiwan. Actually, the Christianity went to Taiwan in 17th century first by Dutch and the Spaniards. But because of Koshinga getting rid of the Europeans, and the Koshinga is the Ming loyalists, the Ming dynasty, so the Christianity disappears. But in 19th century, it comes back again. And so Mackay is very, very famous in Taiwan. And because of the hospital, the Mackay Hospital is still really famous. And also, he is the founder of the Taiwan Theological Seminary and College, although the current location is newer, yeah, because it was, and so Chiwang Iwal, she is the daughter of the Sedek chief, and in 1930, I mentioned the Ushu incident, Ushu rebellion, and that was the battle between Sedek and the Japanese colonial rulers. And so the same ethnic groups of people, although they're from different villages. Because in 1930s, the people who fought against the Japanese colonial rule, they all died from those villages. And so she is the same ethnic group, but she is the first person to become Christians among the indigenous people, and she is credited for a lot of conversion. And so this is the description of her, mother of the Taiwan Aboriginal faith, or the mother of the mountain church. And so she is the key figure for the conversion. And it's because these are the Sedek people who fought the longest against the Japanese colonial rulers. And so they are fighters. They have this spirit of the fighters. And so now, so they're not really afraid of death or torture by the Japanese colonial rulers. And so she used to say, "Our Lord is mightier than all the kings of the world. He was crucified, yet do not forget that. He rose again from the dead, and nobody can overcome him." And so she kept on repeating that to her followers. And so she said, "Welcome the persecution, and then your true faith will be tested." So this is her church. This is where she preached. And now they changed the name. The church changed the name as a Chiwang Memorial Church since 1946. This is the year that Chiwang actually passed away, but the church building was built in 1946 here. And so this is sort of like, this is the Taroko Gorge area. And so this is between the plain area and the mountain area. She lived outside of the fenced area. And so her friends who lived around here, this gorge area, would walk, days and days to listen to her. And this is the Taroko Gorge, this kind of place. If you can see the people right here, it's really harsh nature. And so those people walked to listen to her. And because this is such a treacherous area, the Japanese police could not catch them. So at the end of the World War II, the missionaries found about 4,000 believers, the Christian believers. So this is the Fatan Church. This is the church that you saw on the poster. And it's right here. This is the Hualien County. This is only Hualien County. And all these black dots are the villages. So there are a lot of Amis villages. And the Fatan Church is the largest church in Hualien County. And the Tafalong is the second. And I also was invited to go to the Tafalong, the chief house. And so he is also the elder of this Tafalong church. Okay, so 1997, Amis Bible translation was totally completed. Little by little, they had it, but after that, the church building, started again. But here, around here, there are so many churches built. And this is, the Western missionaries called this as a 20th century miracle. And, but here, during this time, Amish churches were not built because this is the time, historically speaking, Nationalist Party government, Kuomintang, did not allow churches to use the languages besides Mandarin. So the Mandarin churches is a different story, but the Amish churches, new construction was not done. Okay, so this is the membership. So this is from the 2016. As you can see, most of the membership are kind of little, getting smaller. There are only 6 churches, about 100. And so the Fatan Church having more than 400 members, that's really the biggest. So this is the Donghua University I stayed. And so I took the bus 1 hour to get to this Fatan Church. And so this is my footage climbing up the the hill, and here it is. These are the first evangelist among Amish people. He is half Taiwanese and half Amish, and he married to Amish women. And so this first church this is a model of the first church in 1946. This is after the World War II, after Japan left. And because the Republic of China did not prohibit Christianity, but the Japanese government prohibited because that's the enemy religion. So they had to hide to worship. And so they would pretend like they are going to go to the farmland and to cultivate, and then actually they're having a church prayers or like a Bible studies or something like that. But this original one was destroyed by the typhoon, so they made the next one. And this is Pastor Son. The current pastor, Hannah, is the daughter of this pastor. And he's the Amish pastor, and he is considered as the Billy Graham of the Amish tribe. And so he had a very eloquent the speeches, and also he did a lot of, let me read this. So the Christian movement and power encounters against the Amish traditional beliefs in 1950s. So during his leadership, a lot of Amish, the culture was denied. He denied everything, not even clothing. So everybody had to wear Western clothing. And he is actually the son of the Tomu, the village leader, and the mother was Shikawasai, that's shaman. And he had a lot of the relatives who are shaman, Shikawasai. So all these relatives are complaining to him, like, what are you doing? I mean, to our village people. And so they would do that. Okay, we have to test whose God is stronger. And so, and a lot of times without him doing anything really, the other Shikawasai would say, okay, Jesus is stronger than my God, and so I'm gonna change to Christianity. So that's how they did. So this is 1955, and I wanted to see all the believers, how it expanded. And then this is just the youth, 1955. And 1956, just kids. Yeah, and 1958. So it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so now Fatan Church began to be called Jerusalem. So now the Jewishness comes in. Yeah, so this is Pastor Idu. I was with his widow all the time because he even went to seminary in Japan. So he spoke fluent Japanese. So he used to have, until they had the Amis Bible, they used Japanese Bible. And what is this? Tori. This is a Japanese shrine. Tori, right? So the pastor's son, previous pastor, bought this, the former Shinto shrine, and then built their church here. And actually, so Pastor Idu is the one who continued the construction of the church. So they didn't have money. So each church members got the piglet. And the piglet, so each Amis had to raise piglet, one piglet. And then after the piglet became big pig, they sold it. And so that's how they made money. And that money was used to build this church. And, you know, this construction was by all the members. They built this. So they finished in 1965. And they also have a lot of social care. So it's really the church is the center of the community. And in 1980s, also they employed more like a Pentecostal experience. They even built the fasting and prayer, like a prayer mountain idea, and they would fast for 1 week and just pray, that kind of thing. And during this time, this church grew. At one point, they had 1,000 members. These are the current pastors. And so this couple goes to Israel almost every year, and they bring back the culture with them. And so now their church incorporate sort of like a Jewishness to it. And so these are all the people who speak fluent Japanese. And this man, he is 90 years old, and he served for the Japanese Navy, and his ship sank 3 times. He was the only survivor to come back to this village. And so he felt like this is because of Jesus. So he became a Christian immediately, and he's been with this church forever. But as you can see, all the members are kind of aging. So that's the concern right now for their church. Okay, so look at this flag. In the center, yeah, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the regular worship service, shofar, ram's horn. And so I want to read this. So this is not the pastor from this church, but he said, the Exodus story tells us that God stands with the oppressed. These stories help us see how Taiwan's Aborigines have much in common with the children of Israel who served as slaves in Egypt so long ago. So this is sort of like a sentiment among all the indigenous people. And so this is my conclusion. The colorfully costumed Amis elders blow their shofar horns to celebrate the victory over the physical and spiritual oppression given by the God of Moses in a style of worship in the 21st century that merges their Amish heritage with ancient Jewish traditions. And thank you.